Hello, everyone. My name is Chase Feiger, co-founder and CEO of Ostro, joining you from Austin, Texas. Welcome to today's webinar, where we will discuss next best action and all things customer engagement excellence in depth. We are close to hitting our attendee limit for this webinar, which is excellent. Why? Because in order to cut through competing noise and galvanize market disruption, it's crucial we succeed at next best action engagement to secure our next best marketing move that's authentic and meaningful to each customer segment. During this session, you will hear from industry experts who will share their learnings on where to start, where to go, thinking big and thinking small. Let's learn a little bit more about our speakers, who they are, what next best action excellence means to them. Chema, should we start with you, please?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Nice to have you here, and thank you for the opportunity to give my opinion on this topic. My name is Jose Maria. People call me Chema, and I'm currently working in Sanofi. And I have dedicated most of my, the past 8 years of my career to improving our digital engagement in the different companies I have been working. And for me, the excellence in next best action also has a very big, so it's obviously about the technology and how can we find what is the exact recommendation, engagement, content, touch points that we can do to deliver a best-in-class experience for a HCP. But I think one of my big focus on this past few years, like you mentioned, has been on how do we actually embed behavior ourselves, on actually thinking on that in everything we do. So shifting the mindset from branded messages towards a customer experience and next best action. That's in a nutshell what I think about a best-in-class customer experience.
Excellent. Thank you, Chema. Gunjan, moving on to you, please.
Yeah, hi everyone. Gunjan Agarwal. I'm from Novartis. I'm currently working as the Executive Director, Data Strategy and Capabilities. For me, next best action is one big umbrella, but to really enable it, it needs to have a right data strategy. It needs to consider the change management, the mindset, the culture, and then the algorithm. So all that together, if we take care of it, then only we can really achieve the next best action.
Excellent. Thank you. And Rami.
Hi, everyone. Rami Einmelt. I'm the omnichannel lead at GSK. I have 16 years of experience in creating integrated 360 marketing campaigns across various industries. And I've been in pharma for the past 5 years. I lead NBA locally across brands. And for me, I see next best action as being a personal assistant to MSLs and reps, providing insights in a timely manner to help optimize communications and touch points with HCPs, and ultimately improving their customer engagement.
Excellent. Thank you, Rami. So before we open up questioning to the audience, as well as from the audience, as well as to the wider panel, I'm just going to run through a couple of different slides that opens up the problem statement. It sets the foundation for what we're going to be discussing today during this panel. And like I said before, we have a tremendous amount of excitement and so many attendees. I'm just so excited and enthusiastic to see everybody that's attending today's session. So as I get started, and before I get into this, I just want to open up with a couple of key points, which is the fact that other industries have very successfully given control to consumers. And they've done that by offering convenience, just-in-time content, as well as really tailored specific information in the right way, in the most cost-effective way, to provide very seamless, frictionless interactions to users every step of the journey. And so if we look at transportation, of course, Uber, Lyft, Didi, these are great examples of companies. I'm sure everyone on the panel, as well as everybody in the audience, remembers the days before these technologies, having to order a taxi on a very cold winter night in Chicago or New York City, and the inconvenience that came along with it. And this shows you what technology can do. With entertainment, so again, we even though I do miss the days of Blockbuster, walking into a brick and mortar, look at what Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime has done to consumerize the entertainment industry. Food delivery, companies like DoorDash, Grubhub, Postmates. I mean, it really has opened up unlimited options, accessibility, frictionless and seamless control in the hands of the user to enable a wide variety and complete optionality around what foods they may want to order. And that's even found its way to direct-to-consumer healthcare. Companies like Hims and Hers, Roe, Smile Direct Club, Curology. There's a number of others where we have seen success of the adoption of the same back-end set of technology solutions that are readily used for consumer technology industries that have made their way to healthcare. But the real question lies behind, when will life sciences be next? And that really sets the stage for what we're going to discuss in just a bit. When we look at the marketing funnels of the brand.com experiences, or just the overall marketing funnels of patients and doctors that may be getting educated on new potential products via television ads, mail-in ads, email campaigns, and we look specifically at brand.com, what does the funnel actually look like? We see billions of dollars being spent to drive individuals to this page. So there's a lot of awareness, but then when it comes to engagement, there is a tremendous amount of drop-off that occurs from the website click-throughs and beyond. And what I'd like to summarize here is the fact that the industry has depended far too long on simple awareness campaigns with very limited data insight around what actually drives real value for consumers and HCPs. And so when we think about how do we provide a more holistic solution that can really carry through from engagement all the way to streamlining to point of care and treatment, there's a lot that we're going to be discussing today from a technological perspective. Again, today we have a one-size-fits-all model for life sciences marketing and commercialization. Again, we have a one-stop brand.com website for consumers. We have a one-stop shop brand.com website for HCPs. And what I'd like to take the time to look at is the time between awareness to action. A one-size-fits-all model, if we look at some of the best-in-class learnings from other consumer technologies, it's that a one-size-fits-all model really creates a lot of lag time. It doesn't provide personalization. It doesn't provide that seamless interactive experience on a per consumer or per HCP basis by understanding the intent of the individual and understanding how to hold their hand digitally and virtually through a journey to carry them to that next best action. And so when we think about what will happen, what happens when we introduce personalization? What happens when we introduce convenience for where, when, how, and what content is actually served? Providing a personalized one-to-one experience that really digitally holds the hand of the consumer or the HCP to the next best action that carries them towards a better outcome. Really, we see a shortening between that time between awareness to action. And it's going to be a lot of the topics that we talk about in today's panel. So as I wrap up, the formula for driving next best action excellence, it's really about the right experience at the right time. How do we provide on-demand content to fit the schedule of the HCP? Again, we're going to see a shortage of several 100,000 physicians by 2025, right? And so how do we think about providing shifting convenience? And at the end of the day, when I'm a physician myself, by the way, I'm just non-practicing right now. And whenever I took off my white coat and I came home, I was a consumer just like everyone else. I was using the same type of technologies. In the hospital, they're using Seamless, they're using DoorDash, they're using Postmates. to order their food. They're using Netflix when they put on their jeans at home. So the idea is, how do you provide the same way that they've gathered the same level of convenience from the consumer technologies they're used to using on a regular basis? How do we think about shifting and providing that same capability to doctors as well as to consumers at home? So it really is about on-demand content to fit their schedules. And then, of course, when required, real-time answers to questions. It's about providing that information and that right experience in the right way. Being able to provide empathetic one-to-one communication through the technology of their choice, whether they're on a mobile device, whether they're on a desktop, whether they're on a laptop, whether they're on a tablet. It's about providing personalized content that's driven by data as well as artificial intelligence. And it's about using agile marketing and modular content to provide a seamless journey to the next best endpoint or action in their journey. And lastly, with the right information, personalized content that's customized for consumer health. Again, every consumer that walks in or every consumer that interacts with a brand.com experience, everyone's health literacy rate is different. So if you're a very well-educated consumer, when it comes down to the amount of time you've spent learning about a specific disease, how do you communicate to that consumer in a more frictionless way than you would someone that has just learned about this disease for the first time and has very limited experience in terms of their understanding of again, the pathophysiology of this disorder and this disease? How do you consumerize that? How do you really meet that consumer where they are? And how do you do that for the HCP as well, right? If we're talking about a certain rare disease, educating a provider on it, maybe they haven't seen that and learned about that rare disease since medical school or residency. So how do you understand the intent of that individual versus one of the key experts in the field who's a specialist in that specific field? So again, those two experiences are going to be different. It's about providing the right safety information, cost information, and helping consumers find the right HCP for them as part of that journey. And for the HCPs, it's about providing the right clinical trial data, efficacy information, patient profiles, sample requests. So everyone's coming in with a very different personalized experience that they want to have. And again, it comes back down to this idea around how do we really provide that right information as part of that journey. And again, thank you to all of our panelists for joining today's session. So again, I'm going to give everyone an equal opportunity as I walk through this, some of the questions that we have. We have a lot of questions. As I mentioned earlier to the audience, please use that Q&A option. I'll be watching closely in the chat and gathering questions as we go through this very exciting panel that we have. So my very first question, let's start with you, Gunjan. How do you think about interoperability between multiple different data platforms and bringing them all together for a single source of truth to help unlock actionable insights and supercharge our next best action, next best content excellence?
Yeah, thanks, Chase, first of all, for the slides. Very, very informative. And see, the reality of every large organization is that data resides in multiple systems, pockets, and silos. That is sometimes necessary to shorten the time to market and other management consideration. But the other reality is that there is a considerable effort which goes in cleansing, transforming the data. In one of your slides, you mentioned about, I was just taking some notes, that right info. It means that whether an HCP has an experience or you don't know much about it, how do you collect it? You can gather that information if you understand their journey across various touch points, whether they're ordering the samples or the type of campaign they click on it, the website behavior, the lunch and learn conferences session. But the biggest challenge is all this information is scattered and there is no single way to tie it together. What I have proposed is that having a universal taxonomy. One is you do the identity resolution across the various touch points, but then even when you bring the data together, how does it speak the same language? the efficacy safety page or the content on one should not say something else on the other. That is where the universal taxonomies are very much necessary, and that can actually help in achieving the true next best action excellence. For me, what is next best action is starts with the right data strategy. Once you lay down the right foundation, what you are trying to collect, why you are trying to collect it, what is the HCP journey looks like. And then once we reach a stage that where we have all the grains and the story of the HCP, then you build an algorithm on top of it and see that what is the right time, right way, and right info chase, what you mentioned, is to reach out to them.
Excellent, thank you. And that really brings us to another really important question that you really touched on this idea in this area, Gunjan, around that we're, the pharmaceutical industry is really living within a very data-rich environment. And the lack of interoperability is, of course, creating a number of different pains and challenges around how do you actually stitch the data together in an effective way to provide the insight, not just about insight, but it really is about providing actionable insight around how to drive the right learnings for both HCP as well as consumer marketing teams. So Chema, moving on to you again, we all know that we're in a data-rich environment, but there is a lack of data-driven excellence. How do you leverage the data that exists to not just provide analytics and insight, but this idea of true actionable insight that can really provide the right type of content and insight around what type of content is actually working versus not working? And let's just start for HCPs in particular as the example.
I think it's a very broad question. So I'm going to come back to the original point of there is a bridge first that we have to create between the generation of data, because as Gunjan was saying, every interaction we have with a customer, whether it's HCP or patient, generates data, right? And then ultimately, on the other side of the spectrum, the cross-functional team working on analyzing the data or the ultimate recipients of that data, their focus on what success looks like can be very different, right? So for example, the cross-functional teams may be focused on what you were saying, on data like how many visitors we had to the website, how many attendees we had on the webinar, et cetera, which is normally what I call vanity metrics. So that bridge between how do we actually move away from those vanity metrics towards how do we actually use the data, it's the first bridge we need to create from my perspective. Well, the second point is mostly the other thing that when marketeers or cross-functional teams talk about data, it's always a next best action. It's always a very distant future for them, right? They probably remember you were giving the examples in the beginning about, for example, the irrelevant the Didi and Uber and all this kind of things, right? And even we as users, even those big companies have been providing us even at some point bad experiences. I think all of us have experienced a retargeting ad after we actually made a purchase, right? Like, for example, if you purchase vacation to somewhere, you start receiving the ads after you made the purchase and you're like, this is not relevant for me anymore, right? So this is the type of thing that we need to bring the mindset into for our marketeers. Like I was saying, at which stage of the journey is the HCP in the adoption ladder? What content did we push? And here includes a lot of experimentation, if you may, A/B testing, to really identify what kind of segments are responding to different content, and actually sit together, analyze the data, and say, okay, this content didn't work. Did it work? Didn't it work? And then what do we plan for the next iteration, right? So that is a behavior without the algorithm, which is referring also to the point of Gunjan of change management. So a behavior that the teams have to start doing in preparation for using an algorithm, right? So it's it's a change of mindset as well.
Thank you so much, Chema, and you hit on a great there's a number of questions I know coming in from the audience. I promise just to get to them in just a bit, but Chema, you hit on a really important topic, which is today, again, as a consumer, I see an influencer tell me about an entirely new product. Let's just say it's a jacket, a t-shirt, a new pair of shoes. And this is happening on Instagram, this is happening on TikTok, this is happening across the different social media channels. That content is being served to me because, again, the platform knows that I've been searching online and knows that I'm considering to buy that I'm looking to buy a new jacket or a new pair of shoes. So as we all think about how do we, again, I'll move it on to you, Remy. How are you thinking about leveraging learnings from platforms like these to enhance next best action engagement practices? And because, again, we're talking a lot around, again, it's not just about stitching together the data, but providing the right change management, behavioral changes. Really, how do you think about leveraging the learnings from those platforms again around next best action?
Yeah, so I might be a little bit biased as a marketer, where if you are going to serve me an ad, might as well be about something I care about. The majority of HCPs consume medical content in the evening, so reaching out to them using the social channels and retargeting tactics makes sense. And if you time it right, if for example, if they consume specific therapeutic area content, and maybe the next morning they might get an email, automated email, or they might be served an ad a few minutes after on other websites that they may visit, non-therapeutic area website. There's value to that because you're continuously showing your key messages, and that allows you to increase the awareness of your key messages and your topics. So it is definitely a tactic that we're looking into, that we use, because we see great value in it. And I don't think it's being an invasive for doctors being exposed to our ads constantly in brackets.
Excellent, thank you, Remy. And we had I'm just going to pull this question right here from the audience, and I'll give this one to Gunjan next. Do you find it more challenging to serve next best action communications to consumers / patients versus HCPs? Again, on the HCP side, organizations have NPI, which is a big help, but unless the patient / consumer is registered in the CRM, organizations, again, find it very difficult to serve them the same type of experience. So again, what are your thoughts, Gunjan? And I'm going to also give everyone an opportunity to provide their response to this question. I think it's a very important one, between the challenges that exist between marketing methodologies between both HCP versus consumer / patient.
If you talk about TikTok, or if you talk about Amazon, or anyone who give us the ad what we are looking for, but at the end, what is the underlying foundation why it is for us? Because they always think about you. It's not there's a difference between push and pull. What I see an ad on the TikTok and what my son sees is very much based on my and his experience. It doesn't even at a family level or at a zip level, right? But in the pharma, we go through the whole content generation process, the legal review and everything, and then we send it to them. So the more we make it customer-centric, that is my biggest learning from this platform. And that's the reason TikTok or Uber or everyone is successful, because they always think about you. And then they go back and figure out that what is the right content for you. So that's what I wanted to add to what Remy said. And now going back to this question, I just repeat to make sure I understand it correctly. What you are saying is that, how do we stitch the identity together of a HCP versus the patient so that we can do a better next best action? Is that the question, Chase?
Yeah, well, actually, before we get onto that, Gunjan, you hit on a very important theme in your response just now, which is, and then we'll shift over to this, but you touched on this idea that there's some key differences. You have, of course, regulatory compliance, medical legal review / promotional review committees that have to review every piece of content that's going to be facing either consumers and HCPs. And maybe this is a question I'll follow up with next, because again, this ties into the question that came in through Barry around the challenges that center around next best action to consumer versus HCP. But I want to move back to this around whether or not whether each of you believe the right technologies are in place to really help empower the regulatory and compliance MLR PRC groups. Like, are the right technologies in place for PRC MLR review process to really help them do their jobs easier and better? Because again, there's lots of content. There's increasingly more and more content, volumes of content that they're having to approve, and do they have the right solutions to more quickly approve those, so that of course that content can more rapidly be in front of consumers. The right content can be in front of consumers and HCPs. But I'll save that one for next. So again, Gunjan, the question was, do you find it more challenging to serve next best action communications to consumers versus HCPs? Like, what are the challenges that you face that we're talking about when facing, that around the implementation and around communications to consumers versus HCPs? Again, Barry put in a very good, further clarified that on the HCP side, of course, you have NPI, which is helpful. But unless the consumer actually registers with the CRM, how do you actually provide the consumer with that same type of experience? And I just thought that was a great question.
Yeah, Chase, there is nothing like this is easier or this is difficult. Frankly speaking, both have its own type of challenges. It's just that the challenges are different. Even though on the HCP side, there is an NPI ID, but they don't leave that ID and you cannot connect across the various touch points. So you still have that challenge, because if you look at the websites as an example, or social media, there is no login. So there is no way to identify what happened once they consume that content from a campaign. And even the type of campaigns runs in different forms and silos. So I would first say that the challenges are different. It's nothing simple or easy. On the patient side, yes, there are regulations. You cannot do it. You can do on a lookalike modeling by using some other advanced technologies like Snowflake and all that, where you can do it outside your environment and still meet the regulations. So the short answer is there are two different scenarios, two different approaches are required. And that's always the reason I say that have a right foundation and the strategy and then get into it. Because if you start first thinking from a top down that, okay, let's do the campaign and then look back, you will find a lot of issues. So, but if you fix the right foundation, that how do you create a customer 360 for the patient or the customer 360 for the HCP, and then do the next best action, things would be much more simpler.
Excellent, thank you. And I'm now going to shift the question over to you, Chema.
I also know a couple of, I've been exploring for some years ago, some technology that can actually microsegment, right? So leverage the data that is outside, right? That you cannot own, to actually find those microseconds of people outside and try to reach them. And also we trying to avoid the cookie situation. And actually, I've been doing it for doctors, actually, not for patients. And it is, I think this is going to become, in my opinion, this is currently more difficult in my own experience for patients because of their regulations on one hand, but also because of the focus of the pharma industry in general. Our business model is convincing the doctor to prescribe. It's not because if in specialty care, for example, if a patient goes to the consultation, even if they have an opinion, they are not, sometimes the doctors overrule that opinion and say, this is what fits for you, unless the patient is strongly, it's a life or death situation, right? So that's why I think it's more difficult, for me, it's more difficult to target patients in a next best action or deploy next best action for patients, especially also because we don't have enough data from them for regulations and for lack of focus. But I think, well, I don't know, I hope that with the next generations, because in theory, I've been doing a lot of research in the next generation, in Generation Z. Some of the insights that I have found is that this new generation understand the value of sharing their data. So they're going to be much more open to say, hey, here is my data because I actually want that meaningful experience. So in theory, this trend should be shifting, and we should be, and along with it, probably, hopefully, late regulations would become a little bit more, not flexible, but will adapt to that new reality.
Excellent. And Remy, you know, I know that we continue to keep bringing up this idea of next best action, and one of the questions that came in from the audience as well was really around how is next best action measured? What KPIs are organizations putting in place to measure the success of next best action effectiveness?
Thanks. Well, yeah, that's a good question, and it's a tough question to answer. It really depends. Of course, you want to try to be able to measure everything. As an example, one suggestion that can be used is to follow up after having a call. Follow up with an email after having a call. So it's not so much that the content that will be measured, but the behavior of following up, because we know that if you just have a call once a month with a customer, that's 12 interactions a year. If you add a follow-up email to that after that interaction, all of a sudden you're at 24 interactions a year with the customer. So it's really to work around that behavior change, and to some extent, not having to use suggestions or next best action is also a good thing, right? If you're able to change the behavior with your customer facing teams and making sure that they always follow up and they have the right behavior in place, knowing that it does increase customer engagement in the long run, that's also a good thing. There's a way also to measure over a specific period of time, right? You can take a group, you can isolate a group in your customer facing team, making sure they don't receive any suggestions, whatever they are, versus a control group versus a group that are receiving suggestions, and you compare both over a period of maybe 4 months, depending on the volume of suggestions being pushed, and then you see has there been any change in prescribing behaviors, or whether it's depending on a KPI could be prescribing behavior, and another KPI could be brand awareness. It could be the whatever HCPs are thinking around a therapeutic area or your drug. You could try also to measure where, if you were able to make a change at the stage they are in the funnel. Are they more at the awareness? Were you able to bring them from awareness to interest, and then interest to desire, and then to become an advocate or a prescriber? So it really depends, but it's not, there's no one KPI. It's a mix, but you got to make sure you define the KPIs properly in advance, and you lay down the foundations or the proper methodology foundations to be able to measure it properly.
And Remy, you bring up a really important point, which is this idea around introducing, how do you actually properly test? How do you actually run rapid tests and experiments? And this is obviously what consumer technology companies are more rapidly doing all the time. And as Gunjan mentioned earlier, they're fortunate. They don't have to deal with the same they don't have to deal with regulatory and compliance. They don't have to worry about content having to get approved by PRC and by MLR. And these regulatory and compliance bodies are obviously bodies we should very much welcome, because they're really ensuring the right information is getting seen by HCPs and consumers. They're ensuring that everything is of course going to be compliant, and of course if there was a letter received for a certain piece of content, they're going to ensure that they screen that properly. How do you think about technology from the perspective of if you were to wave a magic wand and to create a solution for PRC MLR around how do you think about the future, around how to grow a better partnership between the omni-channel and marketing teams and PRC/MLR through maybe new introduced technologies or new introduced change management to help support some of this additional content that they need to be approved, that they may need to approve. Because again, as you hit on earlier, if we're going to be running tests and we're going to be running A/B testing and various different experiments, the volume of content that PRC/MLR has to approve is going to naturally go up. So how do you think about the technology enablement for PRC/MLR between what sits today between marketing teams and between what's being done compared to what's being done today?
I see technology as being just an enabler. I think, you know, pharma companies, there's no lack of budget to start working with whether it's startups or larger companies that have those technology that we can try. But I think before we go into those technologies or those solutions, there's still lots of work to be done around building the foundations, allowing us to create or to come up with those next best experience, next best content, next best action. And we talk a lot about omni-channel, but within omni-channel there is channel, and I see a lot of companies not being expert yet in channels, like those channels themselves individually, and that is a key to start with. And while, you know, as soon as you become more comfortable with the different channels, then you can probably start doing multi-channel and become better at it, while you start building the foundations, the proper foundations to even start dreaming about doing omni-channel properly. Then the technology that will be there, whether it's, you know, technology that don't exist yet or some, I don't want to, well, I could say Chat GPT. Let's see what that will bring to the table. But it's all about being able to plan properly, have some type of modular content capability within the company, being able to get content approved as fast as you can, but try similar to search engine marketing, SEM. When you do SEM with Google, since the past few months, you don't have to come up with all the ads yourself. You just put a specific keywords and sentences, and the system builds the ads for you, the ones that are bringing the more interest and clicks. So that would be something, you know, similar to be done on our end. Try to mix and match as much content as we can, get them approved, even though they won't all be used, but make sure we have a pool of content to start with.
Remy, you win the award for bringing up Chat GPT first in the panel discussion. I'm going to be asking a couple of questions as we get a little bit deeper around everyone's belief and thought process around how artificial intelligence may be utilized, of course, by the industry and by each of your respective groups, and just based on all the different experiences that you've all had. You know, another question came up around really the design. You know, do we really believe that healthcare and life sciences still has a design problem? And, you know, we're talking a lot about data here, but ultimately, you know, it's really more of a question around, do we really have the right technological foundation and the right, as Gunjan was hitting on earlier, the right training in place to understand the how to properly utilize the right foundational technologies and platforms to meet the standards of healthcare providers as well as consumers. Again, as we think about it, now, of course, there's data that's being collected from synchronous, in the case of HCPs, there's data that's being collected from synchronous interactions, but that's only providing a 180-degree toolkit. And you know, ultimately, you know, synchronous, let's just say, is only 50% of healthcare providers or HCPs marketing's mission, the HCP marketing team's mission. And again, I touch on this idea that there's going to be a big shortage of HCPs. So we're going to really need the right asynchronous educational modalities that they need to be in place to meet the standards of best in class for what HCPs are actually looking for within their journey. And of course, Chat GPT and other related AI and other various different solutions from from a personalization perspective can really offer it. So I want to provide. I'll give this question first to you, Gunjan, which is for the companies that were mentioned earlier, Hulu, Netflix, that have heavily invested in design. Do we think, and do you think, that healthcare still has a design problem? And unless I'm misunderstanding this question, design from a foundational perspective, from a technological perspective, as well as from a UI UX perspective. Why don't you tell me a little bit more and answer both if you can? And the last piece to this question: why have companies within life sciences been so slow to catch up with Hulu, Netflix when it comes down to healthcare design?
We all know the answer. Yes, we do have a problem. we are not so savvy about the design where all these companies are, the other companies which you mentioned are. In fact, I realized this much earlier in my experience. And what I did was when I was designing the customer 360, I went through a design thinking course in the Coursera just to learn more about it and how can I implement, because without that, and I see a lot of other questions, which is about the adoption. See, without having the right design thinking behind building any product, even the next best action is like a product, right? You cannot achieve a higher adoption if you don't have that right principles. So the adoption is always a challenge because we just think about, we have an algorithm, it gives the right content at the right time to the right channel and we are done. No, there is a way to present the content. When you see a certain slide in just having a content, but when you see in a more pictorial manner, having only highlighted the right message, you always grasp and remember that. So there is a much more adoption. We do see that how the design thinking can influence us or impact us in a day-to-day life. But when we build our products, we forget about it. So Chase, the short answer is we do have a problem. We have a long way to go. But as anything which we build new, if we understand this very well and keep it in the forefront, the adoption by default will go higher for that product. Excellent.
Thank you so much for that great response, Gunjan. And my promise on touching AI, Gemma, I'm going to give this one to you. How do you think about the future of, again, I know that we're, first and foremost, I'm going to start off with this. We're talking about that life sciences and healthcare still has to catch up to these organizations. So when we think about things like artificial intelligence, it's definitely going to be a critical and very, very important part of healthcare as well as life sciences future. But of course, there's still some catch up to go in a number of different areas for before we're able to get there. But again, I'm going to give Remy credit for bringing up the Chat GPT. So my question for you, Gemma, how do you think about the future of AI for the automated creation of new forms of content that can be personalized and served at the right time? And then in addition to ChatGPT, what other technologies are you excited about, you think can really help provide that truly personalized experience in the way of go-to-market?
Yeah, okay, so let me start with the first one. So the future for AI, coming back to the point of Gunjan and Rami about that we have a problem on design and we have been slowly to adopt technology. I think that once we pass that foundational stage where the legal teams or regulatory teams understand the value, I think we're going to be able to start using more technologies for content approval. I think even in the chat, they were even mentioning some of them. I have actually piloted some a couple of those that actually you can put text and then it gives you a quick report on how much compliant it is. It is actually based on how to say, for universities. I know about the software that is used in universities to double check plagiarism. So actually it's exactly the same concept, but applied to how much compliant is a document with clinical trial quotes, etc. Right? So publications. So I think that the more the legal and regulatory teams understand the value of these tools, the more they're going to start to adopt them, and that's going to reduce the time to develop content, which is the first point. currently, in general, in average, the pharma industry takes 21 days to approve a single piece of content. Now, that time has to be reduced significantly, and I think AI can help us. The other one on the personalization is on the usage of digital avatars. So now with this new technology that you can input text, and that actually the artificial intelligence creates the moves the muscles of the face, etc., and you can create like deep fakes, the type of videos. That's also going to be something that marketing teams could start to utilize to deliver personalized content from a person who doesn't even speak your language to speak to you in your own language and to address you by name if you allow them to do so, right? And then besides ChatGPT, that I have also been very interested. I was just reading about they asked ChatGPT to talk about propaganda about pharma, which is probably one of the biggest challenges we have. That the online propaganda, they ask ChatGPT to create propaganda about vaccines, and it's crazy what they've created. But actually, there is another one that it's another artificial intelligence that hasn't had that much exposure. I have been trying to get my hands on it, and it's a one that you put words and you tell the artificial intelligence, I want you to draw a lion in a space landing on the moon, and then the artificial intelligence will create it.
DALL-E and Midjourney,
DALL-E,
right?
yes, DALL-E,
Yep,
thank you.
Yep.
Yes, that's the one that I'm also trying to get, because I think the combination of these three is going to help you. Imagine a marketer saying, hey, I want to create an ad for my patients about this, and that, and then the artificial intelligence creating it, and then turning it into a video personalized. You know, it's I think it's and also having an artificial intelligence review it from a compliance point of view, and then ultimately having an algorithm that recommends you where to place that ad or that content for a specific change of behavior of a doctor. That is where my mind blows immediately when I talk about AI.
Yeah, and I mean, so much of artificial intelligence stems back to the data that we have, right? The AI is only as effective as the data that we have. So kind of going back to Gunjan's and Remy's point around, you have to have the right attribution. You have to have the right attribution systems in place to be able to figure out, imagine a world like, to your point just now, I really like where you were going, Chema, where, okay, great. Let's just assume it's Chase who's practicing medicine in Austin, Texas. Anytime, the way that this ad is designed, let's enable Midjourney. Like the way that this ad is designed, he's getting educated way more quickly on how to answer patient questions around side effect profile, and he's getting way more educated on clinical trial information when I provide an ad that's structured like this. But this may not work. The way that this ad is structured is not working very well for doctors like Remy, for example, or like Gunjan, for example. So the idea that, again, you have to have the right data infrastructure in place to be able to recommend to DALL-E, to Midjourney, to GPT, how can they best frame content for individuals like that? So really, when we think about, the foundational infrastructure issues, and I'll give this one to you, Remy, we're definitely moving towards a future that AI is very much going to be a part of. I see a future where GPT, and I know we're talking about ChatGPT now, but honestly, wait till GPT-4 is mind blowing. Imagine a future where every single sales rep, they're going to walk into a provider's office and they're going to have this technology in their pockets. Just as much, the output is just as much important as the input. But how do you, Remy, how do you think about this future of artificial intelligence, and how can you, as an omni-channel leader, how do you think about putting the right technologies in place to help support this future as we move towards it for an AI future within life sciences and healthcare?
We have to think about it, but I try not to think about it too much, because we need to walk before we run, and there's still lots of work to be done within the foundations, and bringing it back to the topic of today's webinar, like the goal is to be consumer centric and to have to create the best experience for our customers, and yet we don't have a one source of like one source of truth within our data. We don't know from like a point of view, from a data point, how many interactions our customers have had with the medical department, with our customer service team, with our patient support program team, with our reps, with how many visits they had on our websites, how many emails that they received, they opened. So that's what I mean by walking before we run. That there's lots of work to be done to have that real overview of that customer experience and being able to be really customer centric, because like you said, garbage in, garbage out with AI. So if you don't trust the data you have, and if all the data sources that you have don't talk to each other, then it's useless. And that the data is one thing, but then there's lots of discussions also that have to happen within your internal regulatory environment about what data can be shared from a customer. There used to be some firewalls that were put in place between medical, commercial, some other departments for good reasons at the time. Some of these reasons probably would benefit in being challenged and relooked at to see what is really what do we really need, and where can we really draw the line, and what can be shared to the benefit of our customers.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Remy. And as we wrap up today's session, I know there's so many questions, and we can have this conversation, by the way, Remy, Gunjan, and Chema for hours, specifically just on this very one topic that Remy is hitting on. So I'm sad that we're at the end of the webinar. But as we wrap it up, again, I'm very sorry to those of you if I didn't get to your questions. Please join us. Please join us next time. But I'm going to ask each of you. Let's start with you, Gunjan. What was the key takeaway, or what was the best takeaway you had from this session today as we wrap up?
Yeah, so Chase, first of all, I know there are a lot of questions and we are not able to answer. Feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn. And there are some questions where my name is written. I'm happy to answer later on. Now, coming back to your question, Chase, that the key takeaways is the problems are same. We all acknowledge it, and we all understand that the foundation has to be fixed. Okay, we have to look at the things from different angles. Even the Chat GPT question which you asked, the technology will keep advancing, but it's not going to be a magic bullet. We have to, even if we look at example of content, we have to create a content lifecycle and understand where exactly is the challenge and what is our prioritization to solve it. Is it a content generation? Is it a automation, or the approval process, or the personalization process, or even the measurement? So you have to look at the end to end and then see where the technology fits. Nothing is, as I said, is a magic bullet. So that level of detail, we have to get into it if we really are passionate about that, how we can have a better customer-centric next best action. So that's my key takeaway, Chase.
Thank you so much, Gunjan. And it was such a pleasure to have you on today's panel. Chema.
Yeah, two key takeaways. One is we are far behind. Every time I have these discussions, I feel like Gunjan was saying, technology keeps moving and we move very slow. It's like, and I would like to go faster. And the other one is, I think we should look at AI and technology from the eyes of how can we actually automate repetitive tasks so that we can focus the human factor on tasks that actually add value in the engagement funnel and to the customers, rather than to avoid the shiny new toy syndrome that sometimes pharma goes into a lot.
Absolutely, shiny object syndrome. And Remy.
Yeah, I think a key takeaway that would benefit us is keep listening outside of pharma, keep watching what's happening in other industries, consumer goods, in terms of technology and tactics and strategies, and try to see where that can be applied, because they are right. They've been, what we're currently doing, they've done it 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So get inspiration from them, and also don't be shy to go slow to go fast. I feel that we were so behind that we're rushing into catching up, and then implementing many things that don't end up talking to each other or making sense altogether. Whereas it might be better just to take a pause, accept that for a few months nothing will really progress, but you'll take the time to lay down the roadmap that will benefit you.
Excellent. Thank you so much again to our fantastic panelists. It was a great and very exciting session. Thank you so much to our attendees. Thank you so much to our attendees that asked such fantastic questions. Really appreciate it, and just adds just greater levels of engagement and really helps us figure out the direction that we're going to take the discussion. So we're all very thankful to each of you that also took the time to participate in today's session. And that wraps up today's session. Thank you, everybody, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Thanks, James.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.